I hear. I'm a clairaudient and I'm an empath, so I hear things and I feel things. I use the word channel because it's the word that seems to be the most appropriate to what I do. Some people call me a medium, and to the extent that I'm operating as a medium between two levels of consciousness, that's appropriate. But channel's the word that I'm most comfortable with. What I'm doing when I'm working with my guides is I'm hearing and I'm essentially receiving dictation and relaying it. There's really no interpretation involved when I'm channeling. I hear the words. I'm a little odd in that when I hear the words, I whisper the words to myself and then I repeat them.
The thing that's so great about Paul is his own hesitation, his own stuff that comes up all the time, or a lot of the time in the groups. Well, I don't know if I'm going to hear anything. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what that means. That is so refreshing. His own questioning keeps the material on course. But he's just like all of us. He's there learning. So it's so refreshing to see that, you know, Paul doesn't have an attitude about what he's doing, about channeling, about, you know, the information. He's on the path to his own awakening, and you can see that. And it's great to be on that path with Paul as we're all discovering what's possible for us as human beings.
I'm a receiver for higher consciousness. I work with guides. They call themselves the Word as a collective. Occasionally they'll come through with names, but that's not a big part of what they work with, and they're teaching. Now are we people? No. Now are we people? No. Paul got excited. Paul got excited for a second, not in the way you think. Not in the way you think, but we are creators. But we are creators and creations, if you wish, and creations, if you wish, of the Christ manifested in man. Of the Christ manifested in man. Manifested in man. We come from the Christ consciousness. We come from the Christ consciousness. We are elevated beings. We are elevated beings, and we teach as we can teach, as we can teach, as we can be told, as we can be told by you that this is warranted,
What I like for a new person to realize about Paul is that he's not a guru. He's not putting himself in the position of being a guru, that he is a person on the journey, on the same journey as that we all are.
Paul comes at this with wonder, with curiosity, with humility, and he's a brilliant guy, you know, who has a whole other career unto itself, and so that really sort of sealed it for me in an odd way. His curiosity about it, his discomfort with it, his wonder about it.
This is the real deal. This is what's really happening, and how terrific to be able to experience this and have access to these kinds of teachings clearly, simply, and now.
Paul and I were attending a conference in spring of 2009 at the Esalen Institute, and I was just immediately struck, as I know others were, with his humanity and sensitivity and the realness of his story, the vividness and the clarity with which he spoke about it. And above all, I was struck that I was meeting a person who was very successful in outer life, as a writer, as a teacher, as a playwright, as an academic, as an instructor in MFA programs. This wasn't someone who fit the usual bill. This wasn't a man who needed to look for success in unexpected places. He already had success in mainstream life.
We say it is simple. It is not easy. It is not easy. Ease implies there is nothing to be done. There is nothing to be done. I have a nice bath. I am on a nice path. The roses are blooming. The roses are blooming. All is well. All is well. That is not what's happening here. That is not what's happening here. Not on this plane. Not on this plane, and not at this time. And not at this time. There is tremendous change coming. There is tremendous change coming. It will take different forms. It will take different forms, and you must manifest yourselves. And you must manifest yourselves as the creator of your own light, of your own light or life. Light in the way we say, as you claim your power. As you claim your power, you give permission. You give permission to your experience to be recreated, in accordance with the light you are, with the light you are. That does feel good. That does feel good, but that's not why you do it. I grew up in Manhattan till I was about 10 years old, on the Upper West Side. Well, I mean, my father was a German Jew. He died when I was 5. My mom was an artist, she's still with us. And I have a younger brother, who's Josh, who's a couple of years younger than me. And we were living, on 89th Street on the West Side. I found out only recently because my oldest friend, Christine, reminded me that we were doing seances, way back then, So, I mean, there was clearly an interest and, I think on my part as a child, but there was certainly no formal religious training. I was pretty much raised to believe that people that believed in a higher power were probably stupid or deluded, and it was a nice thing, but not for us,
Paul and I met when we were about 10 years old. We were both attending the same kind of bizarre Upper West Side elementary school called St. Hilda's St. Hugh's. I think it was 5th grade, and he actually was not in my class. He was in the other class. But I think we were going to some kind of choir practice, something that had the 2 5th grades together. And it being St. Hilda's, it probably was something like, singing hymns, because we did a lot of that. So I remember sitting down next to one of the boys in the class who was, tall and handsome, and I was, short and braces, glasses, kind of every icky thing that could happen to, a kid at that age. And the boy that I sat next to got up and said, "I don't want to sit next to her." And I wasn't particularly surprised, but just as I was opening up my mouth to say something, this boy who I had never seen before came and sat down next to me and said, "Well, I do." And that was Paul. And that was from that moment on, we were friends.
When I was about 25, a night of this event called the Harmonic Convergence, which I'd heard about, I heard that people were going to be waking up, and I went up to my roof that night and I asked to be woken up, and I had a crystal in my hand. I mean, I just, I didn't know anyway. And I had an energy experience is what happened, and it was this big sense of a surge of something really moving up from the very sort of base of my being and up and out through the top of my head. And after that, I began seeing these little lights around people. And it was a big personal thing for me. It wasn't perhaps as dramatic as it sounds, but to me it was. But I studied healing, and I began to be able to feel energy as a result of that. And I could feel, we're all made up of energy. What my guides say is we're energy. We're vibrating at we're vibrating at different frequencies. We choose our vibration to a certain extent through our own consciousness. The experience of feeling energy to me made things very real in a way that I needed, given my upbringing, given the fact that I was raised without these things. And I think I needed to be able to feel, see, hear something in order to be able to trust that we were more than just our material selves. And those abilities came to me incrementally, really, over a period of years, sometimes with a dramatic whoosh, which was like my rooftop thing when I was 25. But when I started hearing things, it was fairly surprising to me and fairly subtle. And I didn't realize that what I was hearing was accurate information until I started getting validation from people. And I was working as a healer in those days, and I used to have my hands on people, and I'd have my hands on somebody's chest, and I'd hear, "Who's Fred?" Or I'd hear Fred, and I'd say, "Who's Fred?" And they'd say, "Well, that's my brother, my father, whatever." And I learned pretty quickly to be able to then honor what I heard, and that was the very beginning of the clairaudience. The feeling energy and the ability to sort of work empathically, that was a surprise. And really, in those days, I would be preparing to see a client, and I would take on their symptoms before they walked into the room, before I'd never met them.
I have read the book I Am the Word, and what I found incredible about it was that it was very simple and very, very beautiful, very eloquent. I can't say I know exactly who wrote the book, because then you would have to say you would know the nature of reality. What I can say is that it seems to be a consortium of very highly developed, very highly evolved beings that are not incarnate, that are wanting to teach humanity right now. And they are putting their energies together to bring the highest teachings that they can bring on the planet right now. The information was channeled to Paul. He was given to him, and it was downloaded to him, kind of like in sessions, in blocks, and it wasn't edited. It was just kind of a clear connection that he received, kind of like a divine inspiration.
The guides were quite insistent that not a single word be changed or edited in the transcript, because it was, as they said, an energy transmission. My name is Victoria Nelson. I'm a writer. I write all kinds of things. I write fiction and nonfiction. I started reading as Paul began to post these channelings that he was just beginning to have about 2 or 3 years ago. I started reading them as he started posting them, and I was fascinated by them. I thought they were coherent and beautiful, and I couldn't understand how a person could be making this up in such a rapid manner, and how they came out in such a, finished form. So I suggested to Paul that he really ought to think about writing a memoir about how he came to have his psychic powers, and that it would be an interesting story, and that how, especially how they evolved from healing into this whole business of channeling some kind of energy or whatever, and producing this teaching.
I didn't want to talk about the memoir. I didn't want to write the memoir. I was actually sort of placating her, because she'd been saying for months, "You should write this memoir." And I really, had no intention of doing it. I really was just looking for an excuse to get out of it. And maybe the guides provided the excuse, but I wasn't planning on writing that either. And the idea, I don't remember that it was about talking in the memoir. I do remember that you were going to talk with me about ways of thinking about the memoir so that I might be able to form it. And I do remember that I was in bed when the call came. So I was, I was like in bed, or I called you, but I was sitting in my bed, and I don't usually channel in my bed. It's not one of the places that I work. And so suddenly they were saying, "We have a book to write." And I do remember that, "We have a book to write." And so it wasn't anything that I expected to happen. And they told us to make a date for 2 days later, which I think was a Thursday. I think it was a Thursday when we started. And I called her up at 11:30. I sat in a chair. I had the dog in my lap. I had the CD recorder ready. I had 2 iced coffees on the floor. And I don't think I expected a lot to happen. And what they did was they dictated we call in the book the first conversation, which is, that's what it was. It was the first conversation where they elaborated on what was going to happen, what the book would be, and it laid out the framework really for what was to follow. And I think at the very end of that they gave the title, I think. Maybe that was in the prologue. But I didn't know, and I really didn't know what they were going to do. The book is an energy transmission, which is interesting to me. And when they promised that at the beginning of the book, I was rather surprised. But the impact of the text on the reader in many ways is quite similar to what happens when they're working with a group of people. So what they say is that the energy is actually encoded into the text, and that the book operates on two different levels, the words on the page and then the energy that's informing it. And the energy that's informing it, they say, is the real text. That's the important text. And that the reader of the text will be worked with on an energetic level if they are open to it, if they choose it. I started getting emails from people shortly after the book was published, and people were saying, I'm reading the book and my whole being is vibrating. I'm reading the book and I'm having an experience. I did the meditation on page whatever and I can feel it. So the guides, I believe, are working on a sponsorship level with those who are reading the text to sort of work with them as they ask to be worked with. That's what I get from this. And I'm thrilled if that's the case. And I actually have no reason to believe that it's not the case, because that's what people say is happening to them. I think it's the intention of the book to support people in acclimating to the frequency that my guides call the word. And there's the intellectual information that supports that, but there's also the frequency itself, which is, at the heart of the text. The new man, as I, Paul, perceive it, is the evolution of the species in consciousness and an awareness of our own divinity and our awareness of our divinity with everyone else. So what are my own thoughts about this? I mean, I understand on a certain level that what they're teaching is that we can be manifested in our own higher being, in our own higher frequency, and that is our choice, and that is available now. That's something that was not available, they say, until recently, and that has to do with an energetic shift that's happening globally. It's a shift of consciousness that's available to us as we choose it. And my guides are very big on this. It's about choice.
For me, channeling is the most exciting aspect of this metaphysical spiritual journey, because those beings that are coming in, and I mean true channels, come from outside the dogma of tradition. These high masters are coming in, giving us the essence of what we need in that moment to evolve.
The trajectory of this plane has been on a mission for some time that has been misaligned, in frequency, and the correction is being made. And the correction is being made in the man. In the man you see before you, and in all men, the knowing of the self as an aspect of the greater, as an aspect of the creator. It's the key to revealing the true self. The true self. This is a global event. This is here. It is present. It is time. It is time, period.
Well, the guides have actually said that it's happening all over, that the messages that they bring to us are not in any way special. They're being delivered to different people in different forms and with different languages all over the world, and they have been for many, many years. But now there is a moment where things maybe have the opportunity to shift. And I feel like I see that. I see that in the people that I meet, who will suddenly start talking about meditation or things that I would normally think, wow, people didn't used to talk to me that way 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I see it in movies. I see it in books. I see it in all sorts of places where other people are not talking about it as if
oh my God, there's this big shift and we're charting it. It's just there, and it's almost like it's rising and rising and rising.
We see each of you as a prism, as a prism, as a prism, as a prism of reflecting the Christ vibration, or if you wish, divine light and essence and consciousness out into the world you live in, We see you as this. We are very busy these days because we are teaching new people, and we call them to us. And we call them to us with one reason only. It is time to wake up. And we say wake up. And we say wake up to yourselves as you are, as you wish you could be. So if you would all think for a moment what you would do if you were allowed, and nobody was to tell you no. Who would you be? Who would you be in your mind, in your expression, in your being? In your being, if you could be anybody, and we say the anybody is you in expression. Now if you say, I want to be a high diver, that's okay, but that is something that you do. If you want to be, as yourselves, in other words, responsibility in the way we speak of, you will choose yourselves. You will choose yourselves as you are, as expressed without limitation. So each of you, as we asked you earlier, think of who you would be. Think of who you would be if you were allowed. If somebody had not said no. If you did not think. You did not have permission. You did not have permission that you could not do it. Do you understand what you're saying? Do you understand what we are saying? Yes?
Energy work can sometimes be, or spiritual work can sometimes be thought of as something that's very, very esoteric. But the thing about the guides is that my experience of it and my experience of this practice has been that it's very, very practical. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. And it's just actual.
It's like talking to a friend. It's like a real no-nonsense kind of thing, It's like they're not posturing. They're not saying you should do this. They're not giving you a lot of rituals. They're not disempowering you. It's very empowering. They give you the straight thing. You know it. You feel it in your heart, and it's there. That's it.
And there's no dogma. To Reiko's point, they don't offer anything to believe. It's about choice and responsibility. It's like it's clearly, this is what's happening. This is your choice. This is your responsibility, and it's up to you whether or not you want to engage it or not. And they always say you can engage it or you cannot engage it, but at some point you're going to engage it.
If you want to know what's really happening now, look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror and see how you are changing. See what you call to yourselves. See what you call to yourselves in your experience, and how you frame your knowing. And how you frame your knowing, the frame that you used. The frame that you used that kept you in limitation, has already been expanded significantly. You do not think of yourselves. You do not think of yourselves as you once did, within a parameter of experience that was limited by the physical plane. You have bypassed that because you experience it. So there is nothing to choose. So there is nothing to choose anymore that does not incorporate material and spiritual energies. You understand this? Do you understand this? You've moved beyond the system. That said you were little. So my life, it's a very different life than I expected. It's not a life that I would have thought that I wanted. I think I made a joke to somebody 25 years ago that one day I would have a turban and be doing tarot card readings on the street corner. I think it was a joke, or maybe it was a wish. I don't know. Because in a lot of ways, I do suppose I asked for this. And I asked for some of this, and I don't mean I asked to be a channeler. I don't mean any of that. But I do remember that many years ago, I was studying healing, and the teacher said, you know, ask for one thing and you're going to get it. And at the time I asked, and I do recall this, I said, I want to go all the way with this. I had had enough of an experience of spirit or the action of healing energy or whatever you want to call it to dismantle what I had thought was a very finite material world. And once I knew that, I just wanted to know more about it and to have more of an experience of it. And when I said I want to go all the way, maybe this is the technique that comes through. Maybe it is about, you know, demonstrating or manifesting or embodying as that aspect of ourselves that is divine, because that's what the guides do say that the work is. Or did I come here for this? Who knows? You know, is that why I came here? I don't know. I don't think I'm here to do what I thought I used to think I was here to do. And who knows what I'll think in a few years. But today, right now, I can say that everything has changed, and in the best possible way.